Aun'Va, also known as the Master of the Undying Spirit, is the current Ethereal Supreme and, by extension, the de facto ruler and spiritual leader of the Tau Empire. As Ethereal Supreme, Aun'Va is not only a highly revered and venerated individual, even by the standards of other Ethereals, but his word is considered to be the ultimate law, never to be questioned or challenged. So esteemed and admired has the Ethereal Supreme become in the eyes of the common people, that even the faintest rumour suggesting that Aun'Va may pay a visit to a particular sept world or colony will not only spark a substantial increase in local industrial production, but various celebrations and ceremonies will be conducted by the local populace in honour of the Ethereal's impending arrival, even if such gossip is ultimately false. While Aun'Va may serve as both the spiritual and political figurehead of the Tau Empire, known to frequently walk amongst the common people whilst flanked by his personal honor guard, the Ethereal has also been known to lead the armies of the Fire Caste in times of war. The mere presence of Aun'Va upon the battlefield has been known to greatly increase the morale of those under his command, inspiring the warriors of the Fire Caste to undertake great acts of courage and valor, which more than once has allowed the Tau Empire to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. In more recent years, however, Aun'Va's absence from the battlefield has grown more and more frequent, which some throughout the Empire have begun attributing to his advanced age. While the Tau are known to boast a relatively short lifespan in comparison to other races such as humans or orcs, the members of the Ethereal caste are well documented to be the longest lived members of their species. And yet, Aun'Va by contrast is positively ancient by Tau standards, with his lifespan having exceeded the most ancient of Ethereals many times over. This is due to the fact that Aun'Va isn't truly Aun'Va at all. In late M41, during the Second Battle of Mugalaf Bay, Aun'Va would become stranded upon the world in question and take shelter within a subterranean command bunker. Despite believing himself to be safe and secure, the Imperium of Man's Officio Audiorum would learn of Aun'Va's location and would dispatch a Calexis assassin in order to eliminate him. As the assassin overwhelmed and slaughtered Aun'Va's bodyguards, the Ethereal would attempt to make his escape. Despite his best efforts, the Ethereal would ultimately be slain by the Calexis. However, when the Ethereal Council learned of Aun'Va's death, they would, instead of making such information public, choose to instead cover it up. To this end, the Ethereal Council would construct a holographic replica of Aun'Va utilizing solid light technology and an artificial intelligence personality matrix algorithm in order to create a near-flawless simulacrum of the Ethereal Supreme. It was indeed fortunate for the members of the Ethereal Council that prior to Aun'Va's death, he was in the midst of uploading his memories and thoughts to an engrammatic shell, which in turn would allow the Ethereal Council to convincingly deceive the citizens of the Tau Empire into believing that the Ethereal Supreme is still alive, despite appearing to live far in excess of a Tau's natural lifespan. Yet this artificial personality is said to have not only been expanded by the Ethereal Council, but more concerningly, altered. Nonetheless, this simulacrum of Aun'Va has been known to lend his aid to the Tau Empire's military forces upon the battlefield, in order to better maintain this deception. But the one question that needs to be asked is why would the Ethereal Council go to such efforts to cover up the death of Aun'Va, instead of simply appointing a new Ethereal Supreme? The simplest explanation is that the Ethereal Council merely wishes to maintain stability throughout the Tau Empire, due to Aun'Va being regarded as a symbol of hope and inspiration for the common people. As detailed within the 8th edition Tau Codex, the Ethereal Council believes that should the knowledge of Aun'Va's death become widespread, then without the Ethereal Supreme to act as a symbol of unity for their people, this could potentially result in a schism occurring throughout the entirety of the Empire. Such concerns held by the Ethereal Council are not entirely unprecedented, as a similar such event had already taken place with the formation of the Farsight Enclaves. The Enclaves, which will be officially established following the events of the Farsight Expedition, a campaign which sought to reclaim those worlds that had been lost to the Tau Empire during the course of the Damocles Crusade, would choose to break away from the Empire and become a fully autonomous and independent entity, one that the Ethereal Caste would have no influence over. To oversimplify, the reasoning for the Enclaves seceding from the Empire is that Commander Farsight, who led the Farsight Expedition, believed that the Ethereal Caste had lied to the common people regarding the existence of chaos, and that the Ethereals themselves knew far more than they had previously let on. Indeed, the citizens of the Enclaves are known to be intolerant or even outright hostile towards Ethereals in general, although a small number, such as Aun'Va, will have earned their respect, even if only begrudgingly. Because a number of Tau have already split away from the Empire in order to form their own independent domain, one where Ethereals are mostly unwelcome, then it's entirely understandable that the Ethereal Council would fear similar such events occurring again, should the death of Aun'Va become public knowledge. Perhaps the Ethereal Council fears that each of the Sept worlds would choose to throw their support behind differing Ethereals in regards as to who would be appointed as the new Ethereal Supreme, and that any failure to come to a consensus may in turn potentially instigate a series of internecine conflicts throughout the Empire, similar to the events of the Mon Tau, or Death Age, a period of history which saw the various Tau tribes engaged in a series of bloody wars against one another. The Ethereal Caste may even fear that, should the death of Aun'Va become public knowledge, then such news could inspire the forces of the Farsight Enclaves to potentially launch a full-scale assault against the Empire itself, in order to eliminate the Ethereal Caste in its entirety. While such a prospect may seem somewhat unlikely, given the fact that the Enclaves have been known to aid the forces of the Empire on multiple occasions despite their differing ideologies, the fact that the Enclaves hold a great disdain towards the Ethereal Caste as a whole will nonetheless remain a nagging concern for the Ethereal Council, regardless as to whether such fears are truly justified or not. Not only this, but even if the death of Aun'Va did not result in a full-blown schism between the various Sept worlds, it would nonetheless deliver a severe blow to the morale of the Empire's citizens. But even then, one would imagine that the death of Aun'Va would need to be publicly acknowledged at some point in time, especially since the Ethereal Supreme has, in the eyes of the common people, demonstrated an unnaturally long lifespan. However, while the Ethereal Council may at some point have to publicly admit that Aun'Va has died, the circumstances regarding his death can easily be falsified. Instead of saying that the Ethereal Supreme was slain by an Imperial Assassin, the Council could instead choose to say that Aun'Va had simply passed away due to old age before electing a new Ethereal Supreme. While such news would still prove devastating to the citizens of the Tau Empire, the idea of Aun'Va dying from natural causes would be far easier for the populace to accept, as opposed to stating the truth of him being brutally murdered by the agents of the Imperium, as the Empire may never truly recover from such a shocking revelation. But even then, there could potentially be a more sinister reason behind the Ethereal Council's insistence in ensuring that Aun'Va continues to live. As mentioned earlier, Aun'Va's personality engrams were not only uploaded to an artificial intelligence matrix, but they had also, as shown in the 8th edition Tau Empire Codex, been deliberately altered. While it is admittedly likely that such alterations were made purely with the intention of rendering the simulacrum of Aun'Va more lifelike in its mannerisms, there also exists a minute possibility that such alterations were made to, in essence, render Aun'Va subservient to the other members of the Ethereal Council, ensuring that he acts as an extension of their collective will. Since Aun'Va in life was the Ethereal Supreme, this would imply that he would have the authority to enforce specific political policies and veto any proposals made by the other members of the Council, whether or not such policies were supported by the other Ethereals. However, with the death of Aun'Va, the rest of the Ethereal Council now has an opportunity to create and pass additional laws for the Tau Empire's legal system, regardless of how dictatorial such policies may be. After all, who within Tau society would dare question the word of the Ethereal Supreme in such a manner? However, what makes such a notion appear to be somewhat unlikely is that the Ethereals themselves may not even need to stoop to such levels, as the word of a single Ethereal is more than enough to coax the Tau of the other castes into total subservience. So influential are the members of the Ethereal caste that not only did they end the events of the Mon Tau by simply commanding the other Tau tribes to cease their warmongering, but they can even convince the Tau of the other castes to take their own lives should the situation ever demand it. Indeed, such a situation was shown firsthand within the novel Farsight: Crisis of Faith, where Aun'Va would instruct Wellclaim, a representative from the water caste who served on the Elemental Council, to take her own life. Despite her initial reluctance to do so, she would nonetheless acquiesce to the Ethereal's demand. Because of this, it would appear somewhat unlikely that the Ethereal Council would need to employ such underhanded methods in order to pass any political policies, regardless of how totalitarian they may be, as the Tau Empire itself still remains utterly subservient to the will of the Ethereal caste. But perhaps the truth behind the Ethereal Council creating a simulacrum of Aun'Va is due in part to the Ethereal Supreme's own desires. Perhaps Aun'Va, realizing that his age was starting to catch up with him, sought a way to, in essence, become immortal. Such a notion would indeed provide an explanation as to why Aun'Va had, over time, begun uploading his memories and personality engrams into an AI matrix, so that it may be downloaded into a new form and allow Aun'Va to continue living, in a manner of speaking. If this were the case, then one would again need to ask as to why the Ethereal Council had deliberately altered his hologram's engrammatic data. But regardless, should the news of Aun'Va's death ever become public, it will nonetheless bring great sorrow and uncertainty to the citizens of the Empire. Whether or not such knowledge will result in political upheaval or sorrowful acceptance is another matter entirely. What do you think? Leave a comment below, and thanks for watching.